Welcome to the latest episode of Over a Pint. This week, we're mixing it up. We got some virtual stuff. We're going outside of real estate and actually interviewing someone I went to high school with who's now started his own business. So Matt Comand, why don't you let everyone know who you are, what you do, all that fun stuff.
Sure. So I work as a performance coach. So my background is originally in sports psychology. So I've been working with athletes, building mental skills, emotional skills to better perform under pressure on, whatever sport they're working on. And then in the last year or so, maybe 18 months, I've kind of transferred over just from working with athletes to now working in corporate settings. So applying those same principles of high performance, not only to athletes, but to sales reps, financial analysts, lawyers, people in kind of traditionally high pressure jobs or situations. Just helping organizations build an environment where their employees can be at their best. So the word culture gets thrown around a lot, but we kind of dive into what exactly that means and what are some aspects of a high performance environment.
Awesome. So I'm drinking Market Brewing. So if you're ever in the Newmarket area, we got a little Market Brewery. So cheers to the first beer since after-prom?
Probably, yeah, maybe Amherst at some point, but
that was after-prom.
Yeah. I guess I went there a few times after prom too, but
yeah, I think there might have been like one or two back from university Thanksgiving drinks, but
yeah,
it's been a while.
King Henry's.
Yeah, which then turned into like 3 different places now.
Yeah, it's now My Father's Mustache.
Yeah,
I think it's
Father's Mustache. New owners, everything.
Yeah.
There was a whole thing there with that restaurant where like it goes King Henry's. There was like the sheriff shut it down. Like it was a full people went to work one day, just done.
Yeah, there was like a sign on the door, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it was my parents' were like favorite place. They knew the waitresses so well that I came home one time and the waitresses were in our pool. I was like, what is going on?
Well, I remember in high school it was all about Lou Moore.
Yeah, so he's now moved to Colonel Mustard's in Newmarket.
Okay.
So they scooped him up there. So he's still going.
Still going 15 years later.
Yeah. Funny thing with him, he played in Thornhill, and that's where my dad used to go to when he was in high school.
Wow.
So like my dad was like, he was a little younger then, so like he'd do shots with us during like his breaks and stuff. But I was like, that's so weird that like we went to him in high school and that's the same guy my dad was going to for live music.
Crazy. He's been around a long time.
Yeah. So how long? So you started the current company 6 months ago?
Roughly? Yeah, just about. So started my own company about 6 months ago. Been working in the industry in high performance for about 10 years. Been coaching for about 10 years, working with athletes for 7 or 8. And I was teaching at Humber College for 5 years as well. So I taught sports psychology there, as well as coaching and a few other courses, but mostly sports psychology. So it's been probably about 8 to 10 years.
What made you switch from like athletes to going after people in business and sales?
Honestly, I mean, I've been coaching hockey with kids as well. Most of my clients were teenagers at the elite level, and just wanting something new, to be honest, wanting a bit of a different challenge. Working with teenagers is really rewarding and it's a lot of fun and it's like really formative years for them. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
At the same time, working with adults now for the last year or so, it's a whole different level of reflection, of self-awareness, of, maybe like the impact you can really have and stuff with them, and shifting their perspective that they've had their whole life maybe, and developing skills they haven't had. So all it was really a kind of a pursuit of a new challenge for sure.
So how's that going?
Pre-COVID, it was going really well. And actually post-COVID, it's been quite a pivot as well, because I'm actually getting in front of more people now than I ever have, just because of the convenience of video and Zoom and stuff. So before the pandemic hit, doing a lot of workshops here and there, in the GTA, in different industries, in the financial industry and advertising and sales, different public speaking engagements and stuff like that. And then one long-term client that I've been working with for about 8 months now, I guess. And it was an advertising company. And it's been going really well. I mean, the feedback's been positive. The results have gone quite well since we started the program. They've been open to it. I try to make it pretty fun and engaging, as do you with your clients, and try to be pretty not take myself too seriously. The work that we do is pretty meaningful, but I try to do it in a way that's kind of every day, and we're just having a conversation. And then since COVID hit, it's been a lot more webinars, a lot more virtual workshops and stuff like that. So it's kind of been a funny pivot that I'm in a way I'm busier now.
Yeah. So do you find like when people come to you, there's like some normal like catalyst that's caused them to reaching out? Is it like they've just seen you and didn't realize it's something they need? Like, what's that thing that gets people into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there, specifically with athletes, there is some sort of significant barrier, whether it's losing your cool when things don't go your way, emotional outbursts, not being able to deal with adversity. There's like really visible emotional barriers at times. Younger kids, maybe there's even tears and stuff like that. And so the parents or the coaches seek a consultant or a sports psychologist, someone who can provide these services. With the corporate settings, I think it's more of a want than a need so far. So what I've found is, people in management positions or leadership positions, senior executives, it's something that they want to provide to their team, that they don't necessarily see this glaring need that, oh my God, our culture is a disaster, or we're losing clients, or we're bleeding, or anything like that. But it's, hey, this is a program we can implement that can, A, maybe take our performance to the next level, but B, maybe even more importantly, it really shows our employees that we care about them and we want them to be engaged. We care about their wellness. We care about their performance. We care about their personal development. It's not just all the time results. And the funny thing is, as we know, like, the more motivated, engaged, happy employees are, the better results are anyway. So yeah, that would be more of a want than a need so far.
Like, so I know, like, it's like with us, when we started our company, we had a pretty good idea of like our ideal client. For you, when you started, like, do you have that in your head of like, this is the like exact type of person like we're going after?
Yeah, I think the ideal client for us would be kind of like a young to mid-level professional, maybe like, mid to late 20s, early 30s, who has some experience, and now they're kind of transitioning, or they're getting to the next level of their career, where they may be transitioning from, a peer level, and now they've reached management level. So that brings itself a ton of social dynamic changes, and expectation changes, and now there's more pressure and stuff like that, more responsibility. And they've typically been like high achievers, and they're very ambitious, they're driven, and maybe they're just like at a bit of a loss as to like how to balance all that. And typically when this happens, it's like the first time in their life where they're not really getting the results they are used to consistently. They're used to getting good grades, they're used to getting the jobs they want, they're used to doing well, and now it's like a bit of a plateau for the first time. So just helping them deal with that and build mental skills and resilience and things like that is probably the most rewarding part.
So do you find like someone like that, like, what are the type of things that helps them get over that hump?
Great question. It could be many things. Everyone has different perspectives, different barriers, different goals. There's kind of 4 components that I've kind of learned through my applied work and through current research, but mostly my applied work. There's kind of 4 components of what I call a high performance mindset. And that would be emotional regulation, deliberate attention, a growth mindset or a sense of curiosity, and finding your deeper purpose. So those are 4 things that I pretty much work on with every client. And then through trying to build those 4, we implement mental skills, things like mindfulness, things like deliberate breathing, something called progressive muscle relaxation, different focus techniques and exercises. Confidence is one that we work on a lot, and self-talk and self-affirmations and things like that, that I think are, when I first started, I thought they were a little hokey, the self-affirmation, stuff like that. And now I've learned that they're extremely valuable. They're research-based. People really enjoy them. And it's something I've really incorporated with my clients that I truly believe in. Imagery and visualization, like there's many different aspects to it. And through discussion and through different collaborations, the client and myself will kind of build a development plan together to make sure it's the most kind of customized for them.
So whenever I hear like the self-affirmation thing where it's like you stand in a mirror and do that, I always picture Cool Runnings
Yeah,
where
I
he's
see
like,
pride.
"I'm a badass mother."
I see pride.
Yeah.
And I show that to kids sometimes, just to exemplify what we're talking about. That one is a little bit, obviously, it's a bit like Disney or a bit like Hollywood. Because he walks in all shy and timid, and then walks out, the most confident guy there ever was. It probably doesn't work that quick. But if anyone wants to YouTube Jessica's daily affirmation, I showed it with Amy's with the North Group University. Sorry, just YouTube Jessica's daily affirmation, and it's really pretty funny and pretty cute. This little girl doing her affirmations in the mirror. But yeah, I mean, I've had clients, in their homes, not necessarily in front of a mirror, but I had one client in front of a TV that was off. So it's a black screen and you can kind of see your reflection. And even that is like, it's a little bit awkward at first, especially with someone there kind of watching, but the more comfortable you get with it, it just becomes part of your routine, part of your habits. And you start to build some resilience and some true confidence. So, and it's fun just to build them as well.
Yeah. So I'm curious because like I do, it's not coaching, but like I do help obviously, but on the marketing side, which is different than when you're working on like confidence. Do you find it's awkward if you're like coaching someone who's like twice your age on that stuff? Because I early on that was awkward for me. I mean, now I'm okay with it, but definitely was super awkward for me at the beginning.
I would say no. I definitely have had clients now that are like in their 50s, or maybe even older in their early 60s. And honestly, it's been tremendous. Like, it's been amazing. They're very open, the self-reflection they've shown has been really inspiring because they're, they start to examine how they view things, their perspective, how they internalize stress, how they internalize success, failure, and their perspective on all these things. And they've been really open in terms of, doing new exercises, telling, a 60-year-old man, we're going to do some mindfulness, stereotypically, it maybe wouldn't go over well, but in my experience, they've been into it and they've taken benefits from it. And some stuff resonates more than others, but it's been really good. But that is an interesting question because it makes me definitely some older clients. But.
So do you find like when people come to you, like generally they're ready to open up because like they've chosen to come to you, so like they're ready, or do you still get a lot of resistance to that?
No, not as much as you'd think maybe. I mean, it's part of my job in whether I'm dealing with a coach, a parent, someone in a leadership position, like part of my job is to create a relationship with them where they feel comfortable. And certainly not all at once right away, but, we do a self-assessment the first session and I kind of ask them, what made them reach out? What are they looking to get out of this? What are some potential barriers? What are their goals? So we the first session or two especially is a lot of information gathering for me. And I'm trying to determine, what they're going through and then build a plan with them. But for the most part, if people, have either reached out or in corporate settings, they've signed up for the program. Like a lot of these programs have been optional and they, to the whole company and they sign up. So they're looking for something, it might be different person to person, but they're looking for something.
So I'm just curious, like you get brought into a company, it's optional. So then what do you have to do to convince people to join now? Or is that all on the executives who have to try and convince them for you?
No, usually it's on me, and I would have either a brief like interview or a brief, not an interview, an introduction, I would say, either over video or in person when we were allowed to. And I would go in for like a half an hour and be like, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's how I think it can help, and here's some things we would target. Any questions? And and for the most part, people are into it, want to sign up, want to get into it, and are interested. So, I mean, specifically in sales, I think when we start talking about like more confidence, getting over slumps, quicker and more effectively, understanding when are you at your best, what gets you off your game, what are your triggers, what gets you rattled, how do you know when you're stressed, like all these questions, I think everybody, but specifically maybe sales reps, start thinking like, oh man, this might be pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, people are open to it and they want to sign up.
So people like you're talking to now, like what are you finding? Because obviously stress is abound for everyone right now. Like what are you finding are the big things coming up?
The big thing right now is uh, the inability to deal with uncertainty, which we all struggle with all the time, but now it's kind of hit on a massive scale. And, you know, the past and the future are really big distractions for the most part. Now, I fully understand also that people who are losing their jobs, like the future is going to come pretty quick if things don't go well financially, right? So there's certainly financial realities to respect, but at the same time, we are now in a position to learn new skill where we have to learn new skills. We have to adapt. We have to adjust. We have to be flexible, agile, and that's like pretty cool if we frame it properly. As long as we're safe and as long as we're healthy.
Yeah.
That being said, but professionally, we might have to do things differently where we wouldn't have had to learn these skills earlier. So that's kind of how we've been trying to reframe that. The other thing is, confidence and resilience, which I think are tied to the uncertainty piece, but just redefining what confidence means to us. I think developing resilience in terms of, like I said, dealing with uncertainty and trusting in ourselves that we can pivot, we can adjust, we can learn, we can totally be agile, be flexible, and rely on ourselves, rely on our experience to develop new skill sets or dive into new domains or whatever.
So now like with your business, like you're saying, like it's a want more than a need.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a tough kind of hurdle to get over for a lot of people. It's like when you're marketing your business, how do you kind of position it to convince people to actually be like, okay, maybe I need this?
Yeah, I mean, it, not to sound cavalier, but it has become a little bit easier lately, where I think with what's happened, people seem to need it more or think their company needs it more. So it's become more prevalent, I guess. Again, not to sound disrespectful to what's going on, but that has come up where companies I spoke to in the fall, wasn't quite a right fit or whatever, and then suddenly now it's like this is great and it would be a great help for our employees. So there are definitely some things that have changed, obviously. But I think that's a good question. Something, to be perfectly honest, I'm still struggling with. I'm still determining how to, all my copy, all my marketing materials, the website, how I position myself. That's not my expertise at all, and yeah, so I don't know if that's a great answer or not, but that's something I still struggle with and I'm still learning. So
yeah, well, that's why like before I was even asked you like who your ideal person is, because that's always whenever we work with someone on like marketing plan, that's the first step. Is like who's that ideal person? Because like every time we talk to someone's like, oh, I'll work with anyone. You're like, yeah, but now you're not going to attract anyone.
yeah,
if you're not like narrowing the messaging down.
And that's the thing where I know what I do is valuable and I believe in it. I believe in myself. I'm very competent. Like I know that deep down, but finding a way to communicate that effectively is something I'm still working on. And I think a good leader would balance conviction and humility. I think my default is more on the humility side, so I'm working to balance it with more conviction and communicating that conviction more consistently. But I think at the end of the day, like, whatever results, whatever outputs your company is looking for, I know what we do will help you get there.
Mm-hmm.
When will it happen? That it could take 3 weeks, like it did with this advertising company. It could take 3 months. Like, big change takes time, but at the same time, some people can get it right away and start implementing some of the exercises and some of the skills and perspectives and stuff. So I know it will work. When, I'm not too sure, but it's like I said, it's something I'm still working on.
So I'm curious because like it is a tough thing to like quantify. Like when it is taking someone longer, like how can you keep them seeing the value of it when it's like 3 months and they still haven't seen?
Yeah, no, I think maybe I misspoke. I think something like that, 2 to 3 months. The feeling, the subjective measures 100% would be there. Like people are into it. They feel like it makes a difference. They look forward to the one-on-one sessions. They look forward to the content, to the exercises. How that manifests itself into results was kind of what I meant, that maybe sometimes it would take, a month, sometimes 3 months. But in like the process itself, I think pretty instantly people are into it. The feedback's very positive and they enjoy it. They like the content. I've been really lucky and really grateful to work with amazing athletes and have amazing mentors and my professors in Denver, and just really be able to frame things in a way that makes sense for people. And like, we'll go over something and they'll be like, oh my God, that's exactly how I think. Or how did you know that? And it's like, well, because this is very universal. Like the reason why it's popular, or the reason why it's on the slide, is because it affects a ton of people. And this is how we can combat it. And stuff.
Well, there's your messaging for your marketing right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just take that piece, put it on the site.
Yeah, exactly. So I think just normalizing things too for people, where they often think I'm the only one who struggles with this, or I'm the only one who puts myself down, or everyone else in the team is doing so well, I'm not, and they feel pretty isolated.
Yeah.
I think normalizing things is pretty important.
Yeah, we've seen things like that, and it's been interesting too, of like watching, like giving those specific examples of like when people think it's just them going through it. So the one that we get a lot is on lead conversion, right? Like people are like, okay, but I'm different than everyone else. Like if you put me on the phone with them, I'm closing that every time. Like I'm amazing on the phone. And then the thing I always use as the example to bring people back down to earth is like, do you know who else says that? Fucking everybody. Like everyone we talk to will say the same line. Just put me on the phone with them and I'll close them. I'm like, statistically, you won't. Like it's proven like, across everyone. Like, it brings people down because that's what they're thinking too. Is like, oh, I'm different than everyone.
Well, that's the thing. Maybe they, maybe they only remember the good ones or the closes, but
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good thing too. I'm just going to open another beer here if that's okay.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, it's interesting, like when you kind of hit on something that everyone thinks is just them going through it. Like there's even an easy one, it's funny because everyone's on Zoom now.
Yeah.
Is people realizing, because everyone's like, oh, what if people don't look at me? And like, do you realize that 90% of people on Zoom are actually just looking at themselves?
Yeah.
Like most people aren't even looking at the other people on the call. They're looking at their own thumbnail.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, it was really interesting when I started working more closely with sales reps, in terms of like social comparison came up a lot. And in this particular company, they've got their sales board, weekend, month end, year end, the leaders are there, the board's there, the rankings, there's a gong, it's, very salesy. So it's very easy to look around and be like, oh my God, everyone's doing so well, but me, and how do I stack up? And it's so results based. And it's just such a, being like overly concerned with results is such an easy way to not be at your best and be.
Do you recommend companies put those boards up?
No. I mean, I would have no problem saying that to the company itself. Yeah. But the thing is, you need to ask yourself what's relevant. And there's this, I think maybe we see in movies or pop culture that, oh, if I see someone else doing, if I see someone else succeeding, I'm going to be motivated to beat them. And could that work short term? Yeah, maybe it does work short term. Is it like a really sustainable, healthy way or healthy component of motivation? Absolutely not. So yes. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy. It doesn't lead you to be at your best. You're, instead of focusing on self-improvement and your own progress, now you're thinking, how can I sell $1 more than this guy or this girl? So it's totally out of your control. I tell them all the time, like, you can't unplug their phone. You can't steal their sales. Focus on yourself and your own development. We want to focus on what's in our control. But no, like where you stack up in your office in the moment of being on the phone or in the moment of making a sale is totally irrelevant. Yeah. It's relevant. You obviously you care about it and it's important to you in the long run, but in the moment it's totally irrelevant. And that is really mirrored with sport, where we all want to win. We all want to get scouted. We want to get drafted. We want to play pro maybe. But when you're on the ice or on the court or on the field, if you're thinking about playing pro or there's scouts in the stands, oh my God, you're going to not play well. You're not going to be at your best. Because that scout who's in the stands, or that potential opportunity 18 months from now or 12 months from now, whatever it might be, again, is not relevant to what's going on the court or on the ice or in the pool or on the field or whatever in that moment. And that takes some time. There is some resistance on that from some clients, because they say, well, it's a goal of mine. Of course it's relevant. And it's like, it is, but it's not relevant in the moment of performance.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, where you need to, we work a lot on building focus anchors, which are like 3 or 4 things that if you put your attention on these things, like you'll probably perform pretty well consistently. And when you get distracted, now you know what to return to. So that, that's, those are much more of what's relevant, and it's all process based and stuff.
So I want to turn to the focus anchor thing in a second, but I'm curious, you watching The Last Dance?
I am.
So as a sports psychologist, how is that watching it when you see like MJ and his ridiculous competitive and like that?
Yeah. So
I love it.
Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods and athletes like that get brought up a lot in this realm of motivation and competitiveness and all this stuff. And I think it could be a broad jump to say, okay, so what worked for the 1% of the 1% of the 1% should work for everybody. And did Michael Jordan make it work? Of course he did. He was ultra competitive. He was like maniacal in a way. Some would say unhealthy in a way. But he was able to, arguably be the best player to ever touch a basketball. Same with Tiger Woods and his work ethic and his singular focus and things like that. But if we start trying to apply that to like youth sport or even college sport or elite sport, like, is that really what we want to be doing? I think it's a broad jump. I think watching it is like just really interesting that he, what his life was like. We were kids when they were winning, and we obviously we knew who Michael Jordan was. But there was a scene, not in last night's episode, I haven't seen those yet, but last week's episode, where he came out of a hotel elevator. There's like 100 people waiting for him, goes downstairs, 100 people waiting for him, goes to the bus, 100 people waiting for him. Like, he literally couldn't leave his room. And when you saw like the visual representation of what his fame looked like, to me, like struck me. I was like, oh my God. And you start to understand like maybe why he was the way he was a little bit. And who knows what the episodes last night got into. I'm going to watch them tonight, but pretty interesting.
Watching them tonight too. So actually, Scott and Spo, we every Monday night we watch them together. We live chat and then watch the episodes. But yeah, they're great. I think tonight's supposed to be, or last night's was when his dad died.
Oh, really?
And like when he went to baseball, like that's
it's pretty interesting behind the scenes stuff. And I just love, even as a kid, I used to love like how teams worked and how teams went from being really bad to being really good, and how you change a culture and implement different habits and stuff. So I find it really interesting.
So how, like when you're working with teams and stuff like that, like how hard do you find that it is to change their culture? But before you answer, I ran out of beer. I'm going to pour a little whiskey.
So the first step is always, in the youth teams that I've worked with, the teams are very rarely the exact same year to year. Like there's always a couple of players change, right? So then it's like, okay, going into this season, nice mug, by the way, going into this season, what do we want our team values to be? And there's a few different ways to do that. We can, a pretty straightforward way is like, let's break up into smaller groups, like 3 or 4 players per group. And a year from now, like, even though the season hasn't started yet, we're going to fast forward to the end of the season. We want to think about, if we asked our teammates, if we asked our opponents, if we asked officials, if we asked our parents, what about us as a team? Hey, what's that team like? What would we want them to say about us? Right? So inevitably they'll come up with a bunch of different words, sportsmanship, respect, integrity, hardworking, relentless, whatever words come up. And some are, more specific than others. And then we'll kind of whittle it down, and there'll be a lot of overlap. So we'll keep whittling until we get to about 4 or 5 that makes sense. And then it's like, okay, these are the values that we want to have. And instead of just like putting them up in the locker room and forgetting about them all the time, now what we're going to do is really try to make them actionable. And so if it's, let's say respect or hardworking or whatever it was that came up, what are specific actions we can take and specific words we can use that will let everybody know that this is what we value. We don't even have to tell them. Yeah. If they watched us and listened to us, this is what it would be. So now the athletes and the coaches and everybody part of the team has a bit of a compass or a bit of a guide to like dictate behavior and dictate accountability. And then the next question is like, okay, great specific behaviors. You're at the restaurant, you're going to go up and thank the manager of the restaurant for having a team dinner. Okay, great. You're going to hold the door open. You're going to shake the official's hands after every game. You're going to lose with class, win with class, all the kind of stuff. Okay, great. What happens when one of your players steps out of these bounds? How do we want to handle that? And that's like a pretty interesting conversation too, depending on the level and the age and stuff. But how do we want to handle that? Do we want to be held how do we want to be held accountable? That's one thing. So now again, there's a bit of a compass or a guide. The other thing is you go to each player or each positions kind of, if depending on what kind of sport it is, and you ask them what they need from their teammates. Hey, you're the goalie. What do you need from your D? Hey, you're the D. What do you need from your forwards? Hey, forwards, what do you need from the D? Hey, coaches, what do you need from the forwards? Hey, forwards, what do you need from the coaches? And it becomes this like interconnected, like, here's what I need from you to do my job well. And you're going to tell me what you need from me. So there's this accountability. And that gets transferred over to business really well, I think, where it's like, and it's kind of an awkward conversation sometimes in corporate settings, because you're telling your boss, this is what I need from you. Right. And it's like, it's a little bit awkward sometimes, or it's an
uncommon culture. That should be pretty easy though to
sure. In theory, it's like, I need a good sense of autonomy and I don't want to be micromanaged. I need support from you when things don't go well. And as a boss, like, you need to be really open to that. Right. So it can lead to pretty cool conversations. So those are two ways that I like to build it. So in terms of like changing the culture, I focus more on what, not necessarily what we want to get away from, but what we want to build towards. Maybe it's just a perspective thing, but I really rarely focus on like eradicating bad behavior in a way. It's like, what do we want to move towards?
I'm curious, like with what you do, like would you consult with them on like when it's good to get rid of someone versus like correcting what they're doing?
That's a good question. My whole thing is I'm an optimist inherently. So my kind of base is always, people want to do well. People want to work hard. People want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be part of something great. And if they're not acting in that way, maybe the environment is broken a little bit. So how do we impact the environment? How do we change the way we communicate? How do we change the way we give feedback? How do we change the way we hire or promote from within? Or how do we change the way we disseminate information? So it's usually the environment first.
Yeah.
Usually. There are moments of like, this guy or this girl is not fitting in, and we've tried to coach, we've communicated expectations, we've communicated, hey, there's a gap between what you're doing and what the expectations are. Let's work on it. And the gap is not getting bridged. It's not getting bridged. Maybe the attitude isn't there. Again, I think there's a moment where you have to get the right people on the bus.
Yeah.
But I think, firing someone or, hoping they leave or something like that is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction sometimes, where it's probably the result of like something deeper that's not going well.
Yeah, like I've had to let go a couple people, and I've always felt it was actually my fault.
Ooh.
Like it's just like I've screwed up, and that's why we had to let
Well, that's the thing. And I think that's a great leadership trait. Um, and even in my coaching, if guys don't want to come back and play for our team, or they want to pursue going to a different team, it's like, that's our fault. Like
go.
either one of two things. He didn't enjoy himself and he doesn't want to come back here, or he doesn't think this is the best place for him to develop.
Yeah.
Either of those two things is bad as a
Yeah.
coach, right? So so it's on us to create a better environment, would be my opinion.
So we brought back to, like you talked earlier, focus anchors. Like,
Mhm.
what are some of like examples of those, and like what would people do to develop them?
Yeah. So great question. It's one thing I work on really early on with clients is, when you're at your best, where's your attention? Because we all know, oh, we got to focus, right? Oh, we got to be more focused. But like literally, where are you directing your attention? And so it could be something as simple as breathe. Like when we get stressed or when we get really worked up, our breathing becomes short and shallow. So we want to, before a big presentation or before a sales call or a pitch meeting or something like that, we want to just be aware and direct our attention to our breath and take a few deep breaths. We're calm and we go. With the advertising company I'm working with, a lot of it is, they call it, step 3 or step 5 of the sales system, where it's like developing a relationship, the closing circle, really cueing in on the potential client's tone and tonality and attitude and energy levels. So they want to mirror that. So it's things in the environment, cues in your environment that you can pay attention to that are like really important information for you, really relevant information. So again, breath is one for sure. A self-affirmation could be one, where I've had clients before be like, I'm great at what I do. And that's something they want to repeat. It's an affirmation, but it's also an anchor. For me, an example that I use as a coach, um, is on the bench. So one of my anchors is the word train. And what that means to me is get off the train of thought. Because I have a lot of thoughts as a coach during
Gotcha.
games that don't help me be a good coach. So what the hell is this ref doing? Would be one thought. Or this guy's an idiot or whatever. I can't believe this player made the same mistake again. What is he doing? We just went over this. All these thoughts come up. None of them help me be a good coach.
Yeah.
So it's like, get off the train. So get off that train of thought. So I can tell, that's a focus anchor for me, where I have my anchors written down on like a cue card before every game, and just the word train, get off the train. Another one would be, I'm trying to think of a non-sport example. I'm trying to think. So what an anchor is, it's like, it's typically like a short word or a short term, not a long sentence or anything like that, that could be really meaningful for you, and what it means, that it might not resonate with other people, like the word train wouldn't do with other coaches. But it's just something too where, and the reason why we call them anchors is like, when we're in a storm and we put our anchor down, like we stay where we are, like we stay tethered, right? Where we're going to get distracted at work or in a sport or during the game, we're going to get distracted, but now we know where to return. We keep our anchors. And I tell clients all the time, like, focusing is easy, it's refocusing that's hard. So now that we know where to return to, I think is really beneficial. So I would say it's just, what are like 3 or 4 things that when you're at your best, where's your attention? Is it on your client's facial expression? Is it on eye contact? Is it on your breath? Is it on body language? Is it a certain word or a question that your client might ask you that you say, oh, that's a cue, that it's like a buying power cue and stuff like that? So does that answer your question?
Yeah. When you're talking, it reminded me of like one thing I find super interesting now that I do a lot of speaking and you see a lot of other speakers, is how different everyone's like pre-stage routine is.
Yeah.
Like mine, I don't actually really do one. I just get up and go. And then like you get other people who like song, like they have a specific playlist that they have to do every time, and like you're not allowed to talk to them during it. Other people, they're doing like push-ups and jumping jacks, and like it's a really wild like range of things you see people do. And it sounds like that, like that idea of like this is how they get themselves focused for it.
Yeah.
Just, just need to
Yeah,
get
exactly. So it's yeah, great example where your pre-game routine or pre-performance routine, go through your anchors, go through any um, any exercises, any breathing, anything like that, and that just gets you like in the mode of your best performance. And it sounds like for you, it's just kind of like you. What I'm hearing is you want to be very authentic. You just want to go up and do your thing and be present, and you're not trying to put on any personality or anything like that. It's just super authentic. It's Andrew, and away you go. And that's how you get to be at your best. So just developing some awareness around that, and maybe a bit more intent around that, I think can be helpful for people.
Yeah, that's just because like literally that's to me like the biggest compliment I feel I get is like from the show stage, and then like we have a beer after, is saying like you're the same person
Mhm.
across wherever we talked.
Yeah.
Like to me that I feels like the biggest compliment I get of like you're not different than who, because like there's so I get really annoyed when I like speak to someone on or see them do videos, then you meet them, you're like you are a 100% different person than your like online persona.
For sure.
And like I've met people like that, and it's brutal. So I'm like, I want you to feel like it's the same person across it.
And that's a thing too, where a lot of the work that I do and all the feedback I get is, I try to help people be authentic at work. And I know that word might get overplayed sometimes, but can you be yourself at work? Can you bring your best self to your work, whatever it might be? Creativity, innovation, maybe more structure and order, and seeing through logically what the next step is and things like that. Or maybe it's more empathetic and you're bringing people together. Whatever it is, do you know yourself in a way? Do you know how you are when you're at your best? Is something I just love learning about people.
Now, do you speak on stage with what you do?
Um, I haven't done too many like huge presentations. It's more like in an organization of maybe 30, 40 people in a conference room or in a boardroom. So it's more like smaller group workshops. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I haven't been like on a stage in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Would you have like your own routine when you go up?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I would. I mean, I'm a pretty deliberate guy. Even now for coaching, I have a pretty consistent pregame routine where I'll work out in the afternoon. I'll do 10 minutes of imagery and visualization. I'll shower and eat and go to the rink and like lots of the same songs as you mentioned. But it's the imagery in particular helps me just stay kind of calm and stay confident and not be a raging lunatic on the bench, right? I think I'm a pretty calm guy to begin with, but we all get worked up, whether at work or in sport. So I think the imagery and visualization is good because it allows me to it allows my values and my coaching philosophy to dictate my behavior rather than my emotions dictating my behavior, right? And that's where I think we feel, we might say something we regret or do something we regret, say something we don't mean, and we lie in bed at night and we're like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that, or I really wish I hadn't behaved that way, or that's not the type of coach I want to be, that's not the type of boss I want to be. So just having a bit more awareness of like what's driving our behavior. So that's where the routine helps me. And I think I'd want to be the same going into like a speaking event.
Because like you just said, like a routine that sounds like it takes a while. Like you're showering, your feet, like you got all these things. What do you help people when they're like something comes up and it's like you got to go now?
Yeah. So it sounds as simple, but breathing is a very underrated skill, and I use that word deliberately. Understanding your breath and the relationship you have with your breath. I get that it sounds like kind of hokey, but it's critically important to understanding, when you're at your best, and when you're a little bit elevated and stressed and kind of out of control, and literally just taking 3 breaths can, you know, 3 kind of deep breaths can slow your body down, slow your brain down a little bit. You know, any overthinking or, you know, overanalyzing or rushing, breathing can help with that. And then I think having, you know, knowing your anchors in advance. You know, anchors, like, I wouldn't say they rarely change, but they're pretty stable. So if you knew, you know, whatever your anchors were going on stage or doing an interview, you know, going through those in your head beforehand, you know, some sort of maybe external cue, like a water bottle or, you know, a chair, you know, just something that grounds you to the present moment. So the more present we can be, the more effective we'll be. So again, whether it's like the leather of your chair, something visual, you know, whatever can ground you to the present moment, I think is really beneficial as well.
Awesome. So if people wanted to reach out to you, whether it's just like see what kind of content you have or hire you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so our company's called Emergent, Emergent Performance. So the website is workwithemergent.com. My email is matt@workwithemergent.com. So that'll kind of give more detail as to, you know, the collaborative process or the working relationship that we would give. I'm also part of an online profile or an online marketplace called Pick My Brain, and I have a profile on there. So Pick My Brain is this, it's a marketplace where we're trying to share knowledge and create a knowledge economy. So if you go to pickmybrain.world, you can search me there, Matt Comand, and then look at my profile there as well for some one-on-one stuff. So workwithemergent.com or pickmybrain.world.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next episode. I don't know who the guest is on the next episode, so you'll just have to stay tuned and find out whenever I book someone. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks Matt for coming on the show.
Thanks very much for having me. Really enjoyed it.